Verses 31-38. Concerning Peter's denying him. And in this part of the discourse we may observe 1. The general notice Christ gives to Peter of the devil's design upon him and the rest of the apostles. v. 31. The Lord said, Simon, Simon, observe what I say, Satan hath desired to have you all in his hands, that he may sift you as wheat. Peter, who used to be the mouth of the rest in speaking to Christ, is here made the ear of the rest, and what is designed for warning to them all you shall be offended, because of me, is directed to Peter, because he was principally concerned, being in particular manner struck at by the tempter, Satan has desired to have you. Probably Satan had accused the disciples to God as mercenary in following Christ, and aiming at nothing else therein but enriching and advancing themselves in this world, as he accused Job. No, saith God, they are honest men, and men of integrity. Give me leave to try them, saith Satan, and Peter particularly. He desired to have them, that he might sift them, that he might show them to be chaff, and not wheat. The troubles that were now coming upon them were sifting, would try what there was in them, but this was not all. Satan desired to sift them by his temptations, and endeavored by those troubles to draw them into sin, to put them into a loss and hurry, as corn when it is sifted to bring the chaff uppermost, or rather to shake out the wheat and leave nothing but the chaff. Observe, Satan could not sift them unless God gave him leave. He desired to have them, as he begged of God a permission to try and tempt Job. Exete Sato, he has challenged you, has undertaken to prove you a company of hypocrites, and Peter especially, the forwardest of you. Some suggest that Satan demanded leave to sift them as their punishment for striving who should be greatest, in which contest Peter perhaps was very warm. Leave them to me, to sift them for it. 2. The particular encouragement he gave to Peter, in reference to this trial, I have prayed for thee, because, though he desires to have them all, he is permitted to make his strongest onset upon thee only, thou wilt be most violently assaulted, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, that it may not totally and finally fail. Note 1. If faith be kept up in an hour of temptation, though we may fall, yet we shall not be utterly cast down. Faith will quench Satan's fiery darts. 2. Though there may be many failings in the faith of true believers, yet there shall not be a total and final failure of their faith. It is their seed, their root, remaining in them. 3. It is owing to the mediation and intercession of Jesus Christ that the faith of his disciples, though sometimes sadly shaken, yet is not sunk. If they were left to themselves, they would fail, but they are kept by the power of God and the prayer of Christ. The intercession of Christ is not only general, for all that believe, but for particular believers. I have prayed for thee, which is an encouragement for us to pray for ourselves, and an engagement upon us to pray for others too. 3. The charge he gives to Peter to help others as he should himself be helped of God. When thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. When thou art recovered by the grace of God, and brought to repentance, do what thou canst to recover others. When thou hast found thy faith kept from failing, labor to confirm the faith of others, and to establish them. When thou hast found mercy with God thyself, encourage others to hope that they also shall find mercy. Note 1. Those that have fallen into sin must be converted from it. Those that have turned aside must return. Those that have left their first love must do their first works. 2. Those that through grace are converted from sin must do what they can to strengthen their brethren that stand, and to prevent their falling. CPS 51:11-13, 1 Tim 1:13. 4. Peter's declared resolution to cleave to Christ, whatever it cost him. v. 33. Lord, I am ready to go with thee, both into prison and to death. This was a great word, and yet I believe no more than he meant at this time, and thought he should make good too. Judas never protested thus against denying Christ, though often warned of it, for his heart was as fully set in him to the evil as Peter's was against it. Note, all the true disciples of Christ sincerely desire and design to follow him, whithersoever he goes, and whithersoever he leads them, though into a prison, though out of the world. 5. Christ's express prediction of his denying him thrice. v34 I tell thee, Peter, thou dost not know thine own heart, but must be left to thyself a little, that thou mayest know it, and mayest never trust to it again. The cock shall not crow this day before thou even deny that thou knowest me. Note, Christ knows us better than we know ourselves, and knows the evil that is in us, and will be done by us, which we ourselves do not suspect. It is well for us that Christ knows where we are weak better than we do, and therefore where to come in with grace sufficient, that he knows how far a temptation will prevail, and therefore when to say, hitherto shall it come, and no further. 4. Concerning the condition of all the disciples. 1. He appeals to them concerning what had been, v35. He had owned that they had been faithful servants to him, v28. Now he expects, at parting, that they should acknowledge that he had been a kind and careful master to them ever since they left all to follow him. When I sent you without purse, lacked you anything? 1. He owns that he had sent them out in a very poor and bare condition, barefoot, and with no money in their purses, because they were not to go far, nor be out long, and he would thus teach them to depend upon the providence of God, and, under that, upon the kindness of their friends. If God thus send us out into the world, let us remember that better than we have thus begun low. 2. Yet ye will have them own that, notwithstanding this, they had lacked nothing, they then lived as plentifully and comfortably as ever, and they readily acknowledged it, nothing, Lord, I have all, and abound. Note, 1. It is good for us often to review the providences of God that have been concerning us all our days, and to observe how we have got through the straits and difficulties we have met with. 2. Christ is a good master, and his service a good service, for though his servants may sometimes be brought low, yet he will help them, and though he try them, yet will he not leave them. Jehovah Jireh. 3. We must reckon ourselves well done by, and must not complain, but be thankful, if we have had the necessary supports of life, though we have had neither dainties nor superfluities, though we have lived from hand to mouth, and lived upon the kindness of our friends. The disciples lived upon contribution, and yet did not complain that their maintenance was precarious, but owned, to their master's honor, that it was sufficient, they had wanted nothing. 2. He gives them notice of a very great change of their circumstances now approaching. 4. 1. He that was their master was now entering upon his sufferings, which he had often foretold, v37. Now that which is written must be fulfilled in me, and this among the rest, he was numbered among the transgressors. He must suffer and die as a malefactor, and in company with some of the vilest of malefactors. This is that which is yet to be accomplished, after all the rest, and then the things concerning me, the things written concerning me, will have an end, then I shall say, it is finished. Note, it may be the comfort of suffering Christians, as it was of a suffering Christ, that their sufferings were foretold, and determined in the councils of heaven, and will shortly determine in the joys of heaven. They were written concerning them, and they will have an end, and will end well, everlastingly well. 2. They must therefore expect troubles, and must not think now to have such an easy and comfortable life as they had had. No, the scene will alter. They must now in some degree suffer with their master, and, when he is gone, they must expect to suffer like him. The servant is not better than his Lord. 1. They must not now expect that their friends would be so kind and generous to them as they had been, and therefore, he that has a purse, let him take it, for he may have occasion for it, and for all the good husbandry he can use. 2. They must now expect that their enemies would be more fierce upon them than they had been, and they would need magazines as well as stores. He that has no sword wherewith to defend himself against robbers and assassins, 2 Co 11:26, will find a great want of it, and will be ready to wish, some time or other, that he had sold his garment and bought one. This is intended only to show that the times would be very perilous, so that no man would think himself safe if he had not a sword by his side. But the sword of the Spirit is the sword which the disciples of Christ must furnish themselves with. Christ having suffered for us, we must arm ourselves with the same mind. 1 Peter 4:1, arm ourselves with an expectation of trouble, that it may not be a surprise to us, and with a holy resignation to the will of God in it, that there may be no opposition in us to it, and then we are better prepared than if we had sold a coat to buy a sword. The disciples hereupon inquire what strength they had, and find they had among them 2 swords, v. 38, of which one was Peter's. The Galileans generally traveled with swords. Christ wore none himself, but he was not against his disciples wearing them. But he intimates how little he would have them depend upon this when he saith, "It is enough," which some think is spoken ironically, 2 swords among 12 men. You are bravely armed indeed when our enemies are now coming out against us in great multitudes, and every one with a sword. Yet 2 swords are sufficient for those who need none, having God himself to be the shield of their help and the sword of their excellency. Do 33:29.